Join us for an abstract in watercolor and colored pencils.
Hello, I am Charlie Newton, and this is Splash. Welcome to another Splash art class. Today we are going to use color pencil with watercolor, and we're just going to play. Remember, I've said before that whenever I'm looking at doing something realistic, I look at that object or that scene as an abstract. I looked at the abstract qualities. I look at the shapes, the spaces, the the figure, the ground, just the organization of the objects. And every time I look at something that's abstract, I think in terms of realism. So I'm thinking in more detail, maybe even on the front end, because an abstract painting brings with it an enormous amount of detail, but the detail is not obvious. The detail is more, it is not literal, it is more emotional, but the detail is represented by the way or the process that you use. So you can get just as involved with detail with an abstract work as you can with a realistic work. The difference being when you're doing something that's abstract or non-objective, and there's slight differences between that terminology, but right now for our purposes we don't have to focus on the differences. But when you're doing something that's non-objective, now we begin to look more at the material and how the material is used. I'll talk more about that maybe next time. We have some things coming up that I'm very excited about, and some special programming coming your way, and I'm going to get more in depth with terminology like abstract or non-objective or literal or figure, ground, relationship, those type of things. Okay, let's play. Let's have fun here. So the main thing we want to do is have fun, and we're going to start off this time with the watercolor. And I'm looking to see if I can find my, Ayantha, do you see my blow dryer? Because I'm going to need it. Okay, that's okay. I see where I had it hooked up, and I don't know if I took it to the other studio or not, but I'm going to need to dry the paint. So let's get started first. Get your wash brush, and as always, if you think you're going to use yellow, and I like using yellow, or a lighter color, use those colors first. Because with watercolor, we're going to do overlays. As we're doing this, we're also practicing our techniques, okay? Because you use the same, you need the same amount of skill to do an abstract painting that you need to do a realistic painting. And you can tell, you can look at an artist's work and tell if they have true skill or not. But, after you looked at art for a while, or studied art, you've gone to galleries and museums, you've done a lot of looking. And I suggest that every art student or every human being visit your local museum and your local galleries and support your local artists. And you'd be surprised what might happen. You may have a real nice experience by doing that. So I'm going to stop here. What I've done is I have laid down watercolor, and I'm going to give you a chance to do it. I'm going to go and find my hair dryer because I need it. No, I have to find it. So my studio is full of stuff. So I'll give you guys the time to decide what colors you're going to use. And with your brush, lay in the first colors and let it dry. I want it to dry. So you can go get a hair dryer, but if you don't have a hair dryer, that's perfectly all right. That's fine. So when making art, you really need a lot of patience. And it's always good to, once you make your first marks, to me, the first marks are the most important marks. So taking the time to decide where your first marks are going to be is very, very important. If you do not have a hair dryer, that's going to be fine too. If you have a hair dryer, I just want to dry this yellow a little bit so that when I paint over the yellow, I want it to look more like a glaze and not so much like I'm blending. So make sure your picture is taped down. Now my paper is going to crinkle a little bit, and that's okay. Sometimes I like for my paper to crinkle or to bend because it becomes a little bit more sculptural. And I like the sculpture. So I want to show you this. The last painting we did was in watercolor, more realistic. And the one before this, we did the same scene in color pencil. And I had been mentioning mixed medium. So whenever you use two different mediums, we just call that mixed medium. Now, your second color is very important. I usually use colors that pop up in my mind that I like. And that's how you develop your style without trying to. You just use your intuition. Your intuition actually comes from your subconscious mind. So I'm gonna lay in some oranges. I don't know what I'm painting. The only part I really like this area here. That's the only part I like right now. Something's happening. Just look for things that you like, things that are happening. You have to sort of disconnect yourself from the picture, distance yourself a little bit mentally from the picture so that you can look at what you're doing in an objective manner. Okay, so I just saw something. So remember, I like this hard edge right here. I decided to create another one for balance. And I'm going to put away this bright or this flat brush, and I'm going to go for a round brush so I can get some different shapes. I don't like this hard line here, so I want something like that. I want softer edges now in the picture. I've decided to leave the middle white, and I've just decided to not use too many colors. But what should be my next color? I think I'm going to use green. There's an artist, and his name is Sam Francis. He's considered an abstract expressionist or a neo-expressionist. Neo, N-E-O, means new. Abstract expressionist. So he is one of the artists that came later in the abstract expressionist school of painting and thought. There's another female artist that's very famous that came along during his time too. So there was the first group of abstract expressionists who created the term. But then in the 70s, there came a new crop of young artists who were abstract expressionists. What's the latest name? Can you remember, Iantha? When we was in New York, we went to a gallery upstairs and we saw her work. Very expressionistic. I haven't thought about it in a while. It'll come to me, and we'll put it up. Haven't thought about abstract expressionism until just now. So this is pretty good. We have a lot to go on. I think what Sam Francis would do is he would. So I didn't think about Sam Francis before I started painting, but when I made my first couple of marks, it reminded me of Sam Francis. Now what I can do is I can remember his practice and use all of his knowledge and apply it to my work, which is going to make my work stronger. So when I'm looking at an abstract work of art, you know, I'll just say it, I'm against these artists who are, I believe in doing your best 100% in whatever you set out to do. So it's going to be hard for you to sell me some art if you don't spend any time learning your craft. And you can trick people and fool people, but I can't. I'm not able to do that. I'm an honest person. And I believe the best art is honest. And you and I know there's a lot of art on the market that is not honest. The artist will do anything. And it's because our world is basically corrupt. I'm not trying to be political. I'm trying to defend art. And I want kids to know that, you know, it's not going to hurt you to spend a little time studying or taking an art class. Matter of fact, art class can help you with your math. It can help you with your economics. It can help you with your business. Because art, the more you know about, if you know a little bit, if you've studied everything, you become a Renaissance woman or Renaissance man, and that informs your art. So having studied Sam Francis, I studied Sam Francis because I like his work. His work is beautiful. And I'm not an abstract expressionist artist, but I can appreciate his artwork. Do you understand it? No, I don't. But since I did not understand his art, I read about him. You know, I all over the world, wherever we went, I stood in front of his art and looked at it. So another reason why I'm doing this like this, and uh, we'll show you some art by Sam Francis. These little marks here, when he first sort of came into his mature phase, he just painted the edge of the canvas. And what he was investigating or thinking about, researching, if you will, because every time we paint, we're doing research. We're doing an investigation. He considered that his canvas was flat two-dimensional, a flat two-dimensional plane. And in painting like this, he considered the rectangle and the edges of the rectangle. And this is something that was very important to the artists in the 1970s, 80s. And African-American artist named Sam Gilliam, what he did, he took this consideration of the rectangle, this edge, this frame, if you will. Oh, I just had an idea. He took this frame, and since he was more of a colorist and a part of the Washington Color Field School, he used his concepts of color, and he took the canvas off of the frame in order to get rid of this edge. And that's, for that reason, Sam Gilliam is one of the most important artists of the 21st century. He's been recognized, but he don't have the recognition that he deserves, in my opinion. His art is in every major exhibition, every major museum. His work is in every respectable museum in America. So check him out. I'm looking for a color that I think will go with this. I have no idea what I'm going to do. And when you're doing something for the first time, now I've used this technique with my practice, and I usually paint figures and landscapes, but I haven't used this technique since the 80s, I think it was, when I was at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville grad department. So it's been years and years and years. So, but I use this technique differently. What I'm looking at is the edge and the color saturation and the variation of color. Like when you look at this green here, you see that you get a darker green here. And because of the water, the green gets lighter. And when the green overlays the yellow, you get a yellow-green. So there's a lot of movement here. I have some places where the water pooled here. With an abstract painting, this doesn't matter that much. If this was a realistic painting, this would be sort of like a mistake. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to see, I found something by looking at the art that I can play with. So I'm going to start here where the paint pools. I'm not pressing down hard with my pencil I'm using all of my drawing skills here. And so this light blue over the orange, the blue almost looks green a little bit. And I'm using the same colors that splash kits you have in your art supply. And it's about time for you to get some more supplies, so we need to connect so I can show you how to do that, how to get your supplies. So see, I'm taking my time, and I'm not sure how much time I have. So
Just a minute.
Iantha is working hard behind doing all the production value. She's doing all of the video storytelling for us. She's behind the camera.
You got about 40 minutes, just under.
And so let's everybody say thank you, Iantha. Thank you, Iantha. But this is so much fun and patience. This is so much fun. But you just have to have patience. Sorry about that. So now I'm working on this little section here. See, now only the artist will notice this little bit, or artists. So I'm not using there are watercolor pencils, but I'm using a regular color pencil. And I'm just trying to enhance areas. And I'm letting the picture tell me what to do. I'm going to use one pencil at a time. So what happens is, like this little area here, you can see this. This is I've done some cross hatching, and here in this area. So the difference between this area here and the surrounding area is so obvious. So that's interesting. Again, I'm letting the picture tell me what to do. So there are some areas of where the colors go sort of dead. The watercolor goes kind of dead, and it's kind of washed out, like this little area here. I feel, okay, I can do something there. And I'm very light. I'm lightly doing this. I can go dark later. It's better to go from light to dark. It's more difficult to go from dark to light. Almost impossible. So I'm helping. This is just the way I'm approaching it. You can approach it the way you're using your color pencil any way you want to. But I just want to share with you what I'm doing. I'm always trying to help the viewer see what they probably don't see. There's some things that the artist will see that the average person won't see because they're not used to looking at art. But they are used to looking at things, but not necessarily artwork. So sometimes you can do little things to help the viewer understand visually what's happening there. As far as the meaning, I don't try to impose my meaning. Well, sometimes I do on the viewer. If I'm doing something like an obvious figure or an obvious theme, then I guess I am imposing my thoughts on the viewer. See what happens when you put the tape there? It leaves white space, so I'm just going to fill that in. And I'm going to retape it. So the paper buckled, but not that much. Sometimes I won't tape any area of the paper and it'll buckle a lot. And I'll maybe use a thinner grade of paper, not such a heavy weight, to allow it to buckle. And that sort of affects the triangle too. Or we have some awesome classes coming up. Don't miss it. Don't miss those classes because I'm going to get more in depth with some of these concepts. And these classes are going to be primarily for middle school and high school students. On up. I'll say middle school on up to 90, age 90. I just want to do some classes with a little bit more advanced techniques, and it can help. So now I'm trying to decide if I like that green. It's darker than every area of green. That green's repeated here. So I'm an artist of balance. And you don't have to be as concerned about balance as I am, but that's one of my strong points. I just like to see things that's well organized. I'd like to see art that's well balanced. It helps my eye travel around. Now, I may have made a decision just now, but I'm going to think about it for a few minutes. I'm going to think about this decision that I think I just have made. So I'm going to put this blue pencil away. I'm going to bring it back out. I'm going to choose another pencil, maybe pink. So every time I work, I'm experimenting. I don't know what it's going to be. Well, with my regular practice, and kids, when I say practice, that's a new terminology that's being used today, so I want you to be aware. So I'm going to use that terminology. All they're talking about is the way they work in their studio, okay? The way they put things together. So in my regular practice, I'm usually trying to say something that's important to me with my art. And sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's not so obvious, because the viewer will come in contact with the art, but usually the artist is nowhere in sight. So the viewer may come to the same conclusions, or they may not, and that's okay. But I normally have a reason for doing what I do. So, am I going to use another colored pencil? I don't know. Do I want pink here? I know I don't. Do I want blue there? No. I'm trying to think of a color for this orange to go over the orange with. I could use color pencil to go over the orange with, or I could use red. I could use a color pencil orange, but I already used pink, and I can go over this orange with pink, which I may go back to. I was looking for purple, which would be normal for me to do. But I think I want something lighter, so I'm going to use, I could use a light green or a yellow. What do you think? Light green would be obvious over orange, this light orange. Yellow would not be so obvious. I think I'll use the yellow because I want that to remain light and not heavy. The light green will make it heavy. That was the right choice. I can see it right now. So what I'm doing is I'm enhancing a lot of this washed out area with the yellow. So this orange is made up of two colors. Do you remember what two colors make orange? Right, yellow and red. So by going back with this yellow, I'm not brutalizing this orange. Now, I can do the whole picture this way. I could stop here. For me, it's too light. I like for my art to carry a little bit more weight. And that's why I had to consciously, I'm going back over this yellow color pencil too. I had to consciously make a decision not to use a heavy color. I'm putting some pressure on this now. I'm showing you how I'm getting this image. So, no, the average person looking at this, they don't know you put all this work into it, but you know it. But the more work you put into something, or the more intentional you are about the work you're putting in it, the more value the work is going to have. And this type of art can be very meditative. I thought about doing something very dramatic to this. I may do it in a small area. I don't know. Yeah, I may not. Sometimes when I know right now yellow is really making some of these colors pop, so I'm going back with yellow in a lot of areas. If I go back with yellow over this color pencil, then of course it's going to blend. I'm just drawing now. I'm just drawing. Remember, watercolor is drawing anyway. Watercolor is drawing. Let me take this tape off so I can see what's going on up here. Now, anytime you do any work on paper, it needs to be framed under glass. It needs to be matted and framed to keep the paper off of the glass. So if I keep working in this vein, this work is going to be very meditative. And I'm thinking that's a good thing. People like to look at things that can calm them down. Everything don't always have to be action. So When I go over these colors, it changes the colors. These are overlays. The value of drawing small is that you can turn the paper around. You can turn the paper around. The only way to turn, you can't turn a huge canvas around. So a lot of times people will paint on the floor so that they can walk around the canvas. So what's happening now, I'm creating a local color. I never think about local color until later on. It's easier to think about local color in the beginning. That's technically the traditional way of doing it, but that's not my practice. It's valuable, and to think about local color before you even ever get started, to plan it. But I've never done that. So usually when I'm working, I'm just using my eyes. And of course, again, I'm going to reiterate, go to the galleries. Always look at art that you can't do. I mean, you can look at art that you can do. Appreciate art. Don't get me wrong. But look at masterpieces, masterworks, and study those artists. And that will help you with your techniques and your art. Now, if you look at the San Francis art, you can see how the fact that the paint sort of trails around the edge, it reminds us of San Francis, but it is not an imitation of San Francis, but it reminds us of Francis. And since this reminds us of his work, since we've read something about him, we know that he's one of the new wave, the younger, at that time, abstract expressionists. And if we studied people like de Kooning, we see how San Francis reminds us of a mature and older de Kooning. Then we begin to put the art into some type of context. I want to figure out that lady's name.
talking about the artist that moved to France?
Did she move?
Around the time of
Okay, Joan Mitchell.
oh, John Mitchell.
Yeah.
I was gonna say around the time of Matisse, thought she's influenced by him or whatever.
Matisse. No. But Matisse was. Oh, she was influenced by Matisse.
I think so.
She moved to France.
Mm-hmm. She lived in France.
I can't think of anybody influenced by Matisse, unless they were living during the time of Matisse. The lady who was from England, you mean?
No.
Okay.
No, I think she's from America.
No. Oh, by the way, most of the abstract expressionist artists, well, a lot of them, and an art history professor might be able to straighten me out on this. But when I think about them, most of them were transplants from other countries like Russia. And they came here during the war. To escape Nazi Germany. And they became, it's amazing to me. America is truly a melting pot because these artists came to America to create an American art form. Now we need the art history instructor to qualify everything for us. The question in my mind, is abstract expressionism a truly American art form when some of the greatest proponents of that style, like de Kooning, for me, in my mind, he was the greatest. When you think about abstract expressionism, I think about de Kooning. Jasper Johns? I can't read that from here.
Oh,
You read it to me.
I wanted to put on paint like Matisse, John Mitchell.
Oh, okay.
She liked his white backgrounds and.
So she moved to France. Where did she move?
Yeah, she moved to the same village that Monet lived in, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, Monet.
Okay. Well, I know she was very much. Her art is she's doing landscapes, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen all kinds. I've seen birds in her paintings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of birds and landscapes, yeah. Foliage.
Yeah.
Beautiful paintings.
You know, and I wonder why most of us, when we think about landscapes, we don't think about animals. I'm going to change that with my art. I'm going to try to change it. I think about that all the time. When I do landscapes, most of the time I do not put animals in it. I'm just thinking about trees and grass and stuff. But what is a landscape with no animals? When really a landscape is teeming with wildlife, even though you don't notice it all the time. There's little ants, spiders, bugs. But I guess usually when you do a landscape painting, the scene is one, not a close-up, so you wouldn't see a lot of the creatures, unless it's an animal like a deer or a hawk, some large animal. But I really love going out in the woods, walking. It's amazing I don't do more landscapes. I love it. Just something to think about with your art too, and I'm going to think about it as well. I actually have been painting some landscapes. The last 4 paintings have been landscapes, but they're more contemporary landscapes.
You leave about 15, right?
15 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Time flies.
Yep. So the hardest thing to do, and I guess I'm talking to the older artists now, teenage and up, the hardest thing to do for the artist, in my opinion, is to change and evolve. But the best thing to do is to change and evolve. So that's something to think about. I need to think about how can I get some creatures into my landscapes. I'm usually doing panoramic scenes. You stand far off. And now I'm really concerned about with my landscapes. I like the lines that I see. The tree branches and things like that, and the light. So I find myself, what I'm doing now, you see I'm using one color. There's some things we could do. I'll save that to next time because I'm going to allow this picture to be meditative. And kids, remember what side is the bottom. No, how you, like, this is how I did the picture. Sometimes you can look at your picture and see if it works better a different way. But since balance and composition is something that I'm very strong in, it usually don't work for me to turn my paper upside down or sideways. When I do it, I'm always balancing things out as I'm working. When I first start drawing, make my first mark, my second mark, I try to place it in the right place. So these little subtle changes, this yellow over this orange, very subtle. The viewer don't know. All they know is how they feel when they look at the picture. But the artist, what we do is we put all our technique into the picture. So you have to take your time. You have to look. You have to critique yourself and judge yourself. I shouldn't say you have to. You don't have to do that. You don't have to. I take that back. But I strongly encourage you to critique your art and keep looking and judging and making decisions. And this could be a total failure. I mean, I don't do this type of art. I just want to show you how you could mix these two mediums. This could be a realistic picture, but you would be using the same techniques. It's just that your forms would come together in such a way that the person looking at your picture know what it is. The person looking at the picture say, "Oh, that's a little girl," or "That's a dog." And most people, when they look at pictures like this, they start turning their heads. You ever see people, look at this camera. You ever see people look at a picture And you know they don't understand what they're looking at. So they stand in front of the picture and they go, then they turn their head. And what that means is they don't know what the heck they're looking at. And if you're standing there and it's your art, they'll say something like, very interesting. But they don't know what they're looking at. And that's perfectly all right. So most times people are looking for objects that they can recognize. But when looking at a non-objective or abstract painting, that's not the object. That's not the purpose. That's not why the artist did it that way. If they want you to recognize, I'm hoping that that artist had enough skill that if they want you to recognize something, you would. A lot of times people say, that looks like is that a bird in there? Or I see a house. Yeah. And it's like, oh, wow, you missed the whole point. You missed the entire point. This is more for meditation. Hopefully if a person look at this picture, and I'm going to stop here. Well, I'm going to do this a little bit. Hopefully if a person look at this picture, I would put this picture in a nice frame, and hopefully if they look at it, it would cause them to calm down. Hopefully this will have a calming effect on them. And when you look at the picture, I hope this has a calming effect on you too. I'm going to tape it down. I'm going to take the picture down. I'll just take the corners. Oops, I want it here. Now remember, when you finish your picture, put your name on it. Can you see the entire picture I answered?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm going to put my name on it. And that's that. You put your name and your age on your picture if you are, a young person, a child. And I hope your picture comes out good too. Remember, the drying time is important. You want the paint to be dry before you start drawing over it with color pencils. If the paper is wet, the paper will start coming up when you start drawing with the color pencils. Whenever you draw, practice first starting off with light pressure. Whether you're using color pencil or regular 2B, 4B, HB pencils, start off with light pressure. Practice using light pressure, okay? If you can go from light pressure to heavy pressure, and everything in between, light, medium, heavy, then you have more tools to use. And you can change how the picture looks. And you also have more control over what you're doing. So this is an abstract expressionist piece in the vein of Sam Francis using watercolor and color pencil. This, as always, this has been fun. This has been your artist, Charlie Newton, and this has been Splash. And remember, as always, art is for everyone. Bye-bye.